Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the simple workforce management software for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Natasha Robinson, fourth-generation restaurateur and hospitality living legend. Coming up on today's show, Natasha storms off the show.
Okay, I'm out of here. I'm off, done my thing.
Phil sets his standards.
Good enough for Pierre Kaufman's, good enough for me.
And Natasha talks about what Phil has brought to the industry.
Glamour and beauty.
All that and so much more as we chat through Natasha's epic story so far. Natasha's story is just awesome, being involved in the family business behind Chez Nico, one of the UK's first ever 3 Michelin starred restaurants. Natasha is as passionate as ever about this industry, and there are some great stories along the way in our chat, and a huge thank you to her for her time. Enjoy.
And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Natasha Robinson.
Oh, thank you, Phil. It's lovely to be here.
How are you?
I am very good. Today is supposed to be the first day of spring. It's the spring equinox. It's trying desperately to be sunny outside, but the blossoms are starting to open and my garden is full of tulips and daffodils. So I'm great.
Yes. There's just something, isn't there, about when the weather starts to turn in this way where, I don't know, everything just feels a bit nicer. And, let's just get to it.
Yeah, hope and optimism. That's what it is.
Yeah, and especially as well, I suppose from a hospitality perspective, look at me getting straight back on message. You've got, they're normally the lean trading months as well, aren't they? The sort of the first quarter of any year, because people are, have got the Christmas hangover and all of that. Although my wife and I do our best to compensate for that because we've both got our birthdays in January. So trying to find places that remain open for my birthday, especially on the 5th of January. So this is a note to everybody out there who closes for the first 2 weeks in January. Please stop it.
Don't. It's funny because we used to, historically, January was always a very good month for us because there was part 2 of Christmas, if you like. So a lot of people entertain at Christmas, their customers or their clients or whatever. But actually, to be able to look after your own staff and take your staff out on Christmas parties or things like that, that very often happened in January. Once all the excitement of the season had passed and you actually had time to sit and think. So January was always good for us. And then things would trail off slowly. But I do know that trading patterns have changed completely over the years. So for a very long period of our career, you could pretty much plan because you knew this was a good day, this was a slow day, this was the high season, this was the low season. But all of that has changed. And in fact, you mentioned birthdays. April, historically, which was my father's birthday and my birthday, was the worst month of the year, actually. And so within the family, April is like, yay, hey, birthday month. And because we were just a week apart, we always did our birthdays together. But from a business point of view, April was not a good month.
Is that right? Right? Yeah. I mean, I suppose you kind of just, in some ways, there's some things that you can affect in terms of, trying to drive business in. But sometimes you just got to go with the flow, haven't you, really, of what is going on.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have said to us, a lot of our kids have said that, in fact, the weekly pattern has changed completely as well. Because a lot of people still work from home. London is busy now. Sort of Monday, Tuesdays are good days, apparently, in London. And conversely, Fridays, Saturdays, not so much. Because people take longer weekends or work 4 days, 3 days, or however they do it. So that has completely changed as well. So that would be alien territory for me if I was running a business now, having to relearn all of those.
Yeah, well, I suppose London, from that perspective, through the week has changed, but actually the benefactor has been then the local communities, isn't it? Because I've certainly noticed it where I live, Stansted and Bishop Stortford Way. The restaurants are busier. There's actually more restaurants coming online than there have ever been before, which is just in the face of all the doom and gloom that's out there in terms of business trading conditions and all of that. And I think we're all aware of the pressures that exist right now, for sure. But at the same time, there's still the opportunity to thrive.
There is. I mean, if I look at Rye, obviously I was born and brought up in London and worked in London all of my life. But for the last 10 years, we've been living in Rye, so completely outside of the capital. And obviously, we're backwards and forwards all the time. But looking at the way that Rye has changed in the last 10 years is quite amazing. It is now full of restaurants. It was always full of coffee shops and tea rooms and that sort of thing. But now we have some really good restaurants, either in town or around town. And certainly, people are always amazed when I tell them Hastings and St. Leonard's. And they all go, seriously, Hastings, isn't that all? But St. Leonard's, which is the far end of Hastings, is an absolute goldmine for restaurants. Young, new, hopeful, bright, happy businesses, which are extremely professional, extremely well run, very popular. One of our favorite beach bars in the entire world happens to be on the beach at St. Leonard's, for goodness sake.
Right.
So all around here, hospitality businesses are being rejuvenated and starting to thrive. We have lost some. There is no doubt we've lost some. But as some go, they're replaced by new and arguably better, more professional ones. We have a lot of breweries down here, a lot of kids who are starting up breweries. We're surrounded by vineyards. By accident, when we moved down here 10 years ago, we didn't realise that we were moving into the wine capital of the British Isles, amazingly. So the part of East Sussex that we're in, I know, isn't it terrible? We're very near to Kent, so we're on that sort of on the border of East Sussex and Kent, which is British wine country. I mean, who the hell knew? So there's a lot of hope and a lot of growth, not just in London, but I'm happy to say in the southeast, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. You can come again. I love this positive outlook for sure. But we've just gone straight into this. But for the world out there, what is it that you do?
Okay, well, so I was born into restaurants and grew up and worked in restaurants all my life. And now that I'm retired from that, I, along with Sergio, we support, mentor and encourage young people into hospitality. So I did 40 years in restaurants. He did 60 years in hotels and restaurants. Goodness. So we like to say that between us, we have 100 years of food and beverage and front of house knowledge, which sounds crazy. But in effect, we actually do have so much knowledge and experience. And it's now time to give back and share that with the younger generations who are coming up in our industry.
Love that. And you do that under the banner of Serenata Hospitality?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got the pronunciation right.
It's just a combination of our names, Sergio and Natasha. Serenata comes out, which is rather nice, rather pretty, rather lyrical. Yeah. And I can find nice songs on Instagram to post behind our posts with Serenata in, because it's a lovely word, isn't it?
Yeah, that's lovely. I like that. Yeah, and you were kind enough to reach out to me on Instagram actually, and it's only taken us about 3 years to make this happen, but we got there in the end.
I know.
But yeah, there's a lot of things that I want to discuss around the work that you do, but we'll do that laterally, because I actually want to take you all the way back. You've already mentioned that you were kind of born into the industry as it were. So I don't know whether you didn't really have a choice to go into hospitality, or whether it was just something that you were just born and destined to do.
I had a choice, and I actually opted out for a while, I have to say. So on my mother's side of the family, which is the French side of my family, I'm in fact a fourth generation restaurateur. On my father's side, on the Greek side of the family, I'm a third generation restaurateur.
Right.
And I know. So it is definitely in my blood. However, my parents, when they met and married, were not planning to go into owning and running a restaurant. They sort of just fell into it. My father had tried all sorts of different careers previously and finally ended up owning a restaurant, because after years of not knowing what he wanted to do, they took a year out. He had enough, took a year out, went to the south of France, to where my mother's family are, and just took a time out, basically. And they spent a year eating and drinking their way around France and the local area and stuff. And
that sounds terrible.
I know, isn't it terrible? He'd been brought up in a household. He was actually born in East Africa. So he was born in the middle of nowhere in Tanzania on a sisal plantation. And my great grandmother had to make everything from scratch. So we're now talking 30s, 40s, 50s. So no running water, no electricity, everything was make do. She had to make their clothes. She had to make food from scratch for a large family. So my father was always surrounded by fantastic food from the word go. And he kind of took it for granted, as a lot of us continentals do. It's just part of our life, and that's the way it is. You know, you wouldn't consider that people don't like food, enjoy food, know how to cook food. Not a thing. So fast forward, he came to England to study, started working, couldn't really find what he liked. Took this year out eventually with my mother and rediscovered his love for food and thought, I know, why don't I open a restaurant? My mother went,
Yeah,
okay,
just like that.
just like that. And that's what they did. So this is now 1973, and they opened a tiny little restaurant in East Dulwich. By now they have 2 little girls with them. Where they go, the girls go. And we found ourselves in this restaurant where we used to help and work and mainly sit around waiting for my parents to finish service before they took us home at night. And it was not uncommon for us to be sort of sat at the back table of the restaurant, do our homework, have some dinner, and then get carried home afterwards.
I love that. I love the visual of that in terms of how integrated in family life that is for you, and you know, it doesn't have to be this corporate machine of the cycle of restaurant. A good restaurant in a local environment like that is a part of the community, isn't it? So
Yeah.
Why not have your kids up the back of the restaurant doing the homework? I love the authenticity of that. I think it's just really, really cool.
Well, so that's how we grew up. And because of the location at the restaurant at the time in Dulwich, we were near a couple of the big training hospitals. So the student doctors used to come and have something to eat with us. And then as we got bigger and moved into town, the student doctors became more qualified and more senior. And so we sort of grew up together. So by the time we ended up 30 years later, a lot of our customers were sort of top medical specialists and all of this sort of stuff. So we all grew up together. And along the way, they had families and children, and they brought their children to the restaurant who grew up through. So there was a very, very much a sort of a progression of us, the customers, and the family atmosphere sort of permeated throughout everything, really.
Yeah, brilliant. So you were a child at this point.
Mm-hmm.
How did it progress from there in terms of your forced into child labour? Of course, I was the same.
Yes, child labour, growing in the garden, growing herbs for my father and helping them out at weekends, which I probably started properly at about the age of 16 or so, Friday and Saturday nights, which, as we were saying earlier, were the big days of the week in those days. So I would help my mother in the restaurant, front of house, and it just sort of went from there slowly. So fast forward to about 17, 18, when I was studying at school, which I was not a natural studier. I hate studying. I hated studying. I have to say, I have changed a lot since then. I am dyslexic, so it took me years and years and years to know how to even read and write. And therefore, I was more artistically minded. I drew, I painted, I could do anything with my hands. And I thought to myself, that's what I really want to do. I don't want to work in restaurant. I've done the restaurant thing. 17, done the restaurant thing.
Yeah.
Been there, done
Been
that.
everything there is to see. That's it.
Move on. Next. So I actually studied history of art and design and merchandising. I thought, right, last thing I'm going to do is work in a restaurant like my parents. I'm going to go out there, big wide world. And I did that for a little bit and then slowly got sucked back into the restaurant because I was working still part-time on and off with my parents.
Yeah.
And then as Daddy became more professional, I suppose, because it had started out as a sort of, right, let's try this and see where this takes us. Then in where we were at this time, we were in Battersea. He got his first star. So
nice.
he then
what year are we in now at this point, roughly?
Battersea, early 80s. Yeah, early 80s.
Right, okay.
So we lived upstairs.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, here we are again, like the authenticity of a family restaurant, as it were. But I suppose at that time as well, the food scene in London probably had not fully taken off.
No.
By any stretch of the imagination. So you were, to get a star at that time, you were probably one of a chosen few, I would imagine.
It was an uphill battle at that time. Everything was a fight. People were not used to eating out as much as they do now. People didn't have cookery books all over their kitchen counter or shelves the way that they do now. they weren't used to some of the ingredients that we had in the food. Oh, I don't like this. I can't eat garlic. What's that? Ooh, that tastes odd. Why have you put it, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And it was very difficult. And as my dad says in one of his books, he always says that when he started cooking, he had to go to the chemist to find olive oil. Now, he had grown up in a Greek household where olive oil was what you had at home and cooked with and
you
ate.
couldn't move for olive oil in Greece.
Yes, absolutely. So here, you couldn't move for not finding olive oil. You had to move around Boots to find olive oil because that's the only place that they stocked it in little jars for medicinal purposes. I know. And we're not talking that long ago.
No, I mean, not in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean, to think about how that is just such a taken for granted staple of any household now, isn't it? Really, I mean, anybody who cooks will have a bottle of olive oil kicking around for sure.
Absolutely, and several others, because we're now so used to the variety of things we can get, and we don't have to go to specialist delicatessens or shops or things like that. Any supermarket will have an array of all sorts of things. And so we got our first star, and this made Daddy realise that, hang on, I'm onto something here. I need to do a bit more investigation. He was a very sort of erudite person. And 1 star, okay, that sounds very nice. What does it mean? Why have I got it? And can I get another? And then he realised that actually, once you've got the second, there is a mythical thing called a 3rd star. So to him, it was a given. Why would you stop at 1 or 2 when 3 are available? You just go for the 3. That was his attitude.
Yeah. What was his role? He wasn't the chef, or he was?
Yes, he was the chef. So my father was Nicola Dennis, and he was he ended up by being the first British chef to get 3 Michelin stars. And he was British because when he was born in Tanzania, Tanzania was a British colony, and by default, you get British citizenship. So Greek family and background, British passport. So when he got his 3rd star, that made him the first British chef to get 3 Michelin stars.
Right. Isn't that one of the wonderful things of hospitality as well, though? Like, you've just named 3 places that, okay, the British passport maybe helped to move between those 2 territories, but Greek background, Tanzanian born, British made, as it were.
Yeah.
That to me just sums up how wonderful this world can be when you just think laterally about what's possible.
Absolutely. And particularly, as you say, in hospitality, we are surrounded by every nationality, and it's wonderful. And that's also London. That's very, very much London, isn't it? The melting pot, the hodgepodge that is London, where you grow up surrounded by everything. My sister and I went to the French Lycée when we were growing up. And the French Lycée was also a pool of people from around the world, because a lot of families travelled, or dads were posted to various locations. And the one stable thing that they could give their kids was if they put them in the French Lycée. If you're posted to Dakar, there's a French Lycée. If you're posted to Athens, there's a French Lycée. So your kids' education will be continuous and unbroken. So within that school system, we were not only surrounded by kids from all over the world, but also all the restaurant kids from London. They all went to the French Lycée as well, all the French kids. So we grew up surrounded by all sorts. And then in London is such a cosmopolitan city, and it is wonderful for that.
Amazing. Yeah, totally. I mean, I'd read something. This is a few years ago now. It's probably changed to even more. But the melting pot of restaurant diversity that is available means that in London you can eat somewhere for lunch and dinner in a different place, and you'd never have to go back to the same place in 7 years. It was just, I thought that was from a statistical perspective, I thought isn't that incredible that there is that quantity of places to go and see. And okay, you've got every possible area of the spectrum on there in terms of, quality and integrity, probably in some instances as well. But nevertheless, it's, I mean, it's just such a ripe and ready place to, London is ready for whatever experience you want to bring into the fold.
It's wonderful. It is wonderful. And going back to locally, so not so London-centric, Hastings and St Leonard's also has all sorts of varieties of cuisines. We have Lebanese restaurants, we have West African restaurants, we have local family restaurants, we have farm-led restaurants, we have organic. I mean, we have everything. We have Arabic grocers also in St Leonard's, which is lovely because, I mean, I go and I step into an Arabic grocer and the produce is just so lovely. All the herbs and spices, and you get that fabulous instant hit smell that you get in a continental grocers or delicatessen. So I get my fix of that half an hour from here. It's fabulous. Really, really great.
Yeah. So back to the restaurant. Third
Back to the
star
restaurant.
achieved. And what is your involvement in at this point in time?
So initially it was part-time working, helping out at weekends. And then when Daddy sort of realized that actually 3 stars was the pinnacle of what he should be achieving, we came together as a family and we realized that one of the best ways of achieving this goal would be as a family. So you come together, my sister, myself, my parents, and no one will work longer, better, harder, stronger, faster than your family.
Yeah.
So we came back together. I gave up any sort of dreams of working in history of art or design or anything like that, which actually within hospitality, I was able to come back to many years later. So it's not all lost because hospitality is so enormously varied that there is room for that. If that's the way that your mind works, you can find that niche.
Yeah.
So we came together, and then at that point, so rather like my father, don't do anything by halves. If you're going to do it properly. So threw myself in, all in, front of house, go for it. My big thing was reception and organising reception. And my mother was still at that point front of house. And then when she stepped back, we had a restaurant manager. So basically just running and managing everything, making sure that it's the best that it can possibly be.
Yeah.
And then eventually we got our 3rd star. So that was great.
Brilliant. Yeah. And so how describe then, I guess, when the 3rd star comes along, because as you say, that's not something that's handed out just for the crack. You know, there has to be, I suppose, a sustained devotion to excellence across, quite a long period of time before you're kind of, I suppose, even considered. It's rare that somebody just goes straight in at 3. I think Heston did it, didn't he, when he reopened Fat Duck? But it's, he had years of history of 3 stars before that.
Yeah.
But so describe the feeling then when, because this was something that you as a group, as a family, were actually meaningfully focused on trying to achieve.
Yes, absolutely.
So when it happened, what was that like?
It was quite extraordinary because for my father, it was the absolute pinnacle of working so long and so hard and being an absent father, probably an absent husband, an absent everything, which we didn't specifically feel. But I think parents feel that more than the kids very often, that they didn't do enough or they weren't around enough or whatever. So for him, that was fantastic. For my mother, obviously, because she was 50% of that. Without her, it would never have happened.
Yeah.
Because having, a flamboyant chef who's always loud and letting off a fair amount of steam, you need someone grounded and quiet who just runs the business and makes sure that it keeps ticking over. So runs the family, makes sure the girls are okay, looks after the dogs, makes sure they're fed and watered, looks after the finances of the business, looks after the staff, looks after the pay. So that was her role. So between the two of them, that's how it happened. It was also fantastic for all of his boys. He always had extraordinarily strong, loyal brigades of boys who followed him from restaurant to restaurant and worked with him for very long periods of time. Our first head chef, Paul Flynn, was with us 9 years before he moved back to Ireland to open his own restaurant. Our front of house team stayed for many years. Our maître d', Jean-Luc, was with us for, and I always forget this, so either 10 or 15 years. He worked with my mother and then he became the maître d' and took over from her. So it was a reward for all of the hard work that everyone had put in. And I know Chez Nico is the one that carries the 3 stars, or my father's name has the 3 stars associated. But without this whole package of people, it would never have happened. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. And his mantra was he always said, consistency, consistency, consistency. He wasn't one of these people who had a dish of the day every day and, right, what we got today, let's have a look and see what we can do. He would perfect his food over years if necessary. to make each dish as perfect as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
And a lot of our boys have taken that with them, and they are very strong, very consistent. They have strong businesses. They understood the ethos of running a proper business, as well as just being able to give good food and good service, that it's the complete package. And I think they learnt that from my parents as well, very much.
Yeah, but I suppose that's a major part of anybody who is devoted to a life in hospitality. At some point, I think it comes to us all, whereby you feel almost this, outpouring of desire to give back, to make sure that the people who are coming through are getting the skills that they need to be successful, and so on and so forth. And I can't imagine that that's any different than somebody who, like your father, who devoted so much to the industry. But I
Mm,
also like the fact that he was, I suppose, humble enough to understand that he could be producing the greatest food on the planet, but without the rest of it, there's no 3 stars.
mm,
There's no business,
mm,
probably. And this is the intricacies of business I find really, really fascinating, especially when you're in an operation that is so people focused. You
yep.
can't deliver excellence without everybody being on the same page and without all
Mhm,
pulling together in the same direction.
mhm,
The fact that you had such length of service in key components of the team speaks volumes as to how you're actually able to achieve consistency, I'd say.
mm, absolutely. Yes, absolutely it does. He always had a reputation for being sort of very loud and very shouty and very outspoken and very this and very that and very difficult to be around or be with or work for. But I mean, if that were all true, then we wouldn't have had this consistency, as you say, this backbone of staff who stayed with us. And also, to get to the top of your profession, you do have to be very focused and single-minded. And if you're sort of flappy, hysterical, shouty, and loud, you're not going to get there. So behind the sort of face of his larger than life personality, there was also a very, very meticulous, dedicated person.
Yeah, I think the thing about the shoutiness is something that gets a lot of kind of focus now, isn't it?
Mm,
That nobody wants to be in shouty kitchens, and I
yeah,
completely understand that. But I think sometimes the shoutiness can be misrepresented. I think none of us are perfect, and we all have our moments where we lose our marbles over something. And actually, if your devotion is to excellence,
mm,
and really what you're trying to do is get everybody to get up to that standard, and maybe somebody
mm,
delivers a sauce to the pass which is not quite perfect, or the
mm,
mise en place is just a couple of millimeters out or whatever on your the veg prep, or whatever it is. Actually, if you I suppose the key thing with leadership in that respect, if you're kind of susceptible to little moments of shouty weakness, let's call them,
mm.
if people are aware that that's part of it, but the intention behind it is actually, it's a positive
Yeah,
intention, because we want this
yeah,
place to be the best it can be. We want you to be the best you can be. And sometimes people just need a little bit of a kick to get there. And I
yeah,
think, it's not something that I advocate in any shape or form. I think bullying is just, is unacceptable. But actually,
totally.
raised voices are just part of life. And
Yeah,
yeah,
his voice was very often raised because he had a loud raised voice. His kitchens technically were very quiet, very organized, no shouting, no. He had very colourful language, but there was no bullying or intimidation in the way that there has been in some kitchens. He would never have stood for any of that.
yeah.
His anger was very often aimed at either customers or media and journalists who didn't understand what he was doing, and that
Really?
would
Right.
irritate him.
Right.
And he would get angry on behalf of his teams because he was standing up for perfection and excellence. Because what we do is a profession. It's not a job. It's not a hobby. It's not something you do because there's nothing else you can do or you can. What he was standing up for was the hospitality profession.
Yeah.
And people who denigrated it or made fun of it, he wouldn't put up with. He wouldn't put
Yeah.
up with people who, so as I said earlier on, journalists who made fun of what we did for a living, customers who wouldn't turn up, no shows, for instance, was a
Oh,
huge thing for us.
the thing
Um,
is that we're still talking about these problems now.
we are still talking
You
about
know.
these things, absolutely. But now, if you think of how much more conscious people are of restaurants and hospitality, going back a few years, going to a restaurant, not going to a restaurant, turning up 3 when you book for 6, not a big deal. Not people just did not care.
Hmm.
And it is perfectly true. People always say, is it an apocryphal story? Is it true? It's absolutely true. When we had no shows. And remember, these were very small premises and therefore small amount of customers, small amount of covers, very tight margins. So if you have a table of 4 who don't turn up, that's it. Your whole day has been a waste of time.
Indeed.
So he would go through the service, carry on as normal. And then either when he got home or just before closing the restaurant, he would ring those people. So we're now talking 2:00 in the morning. He would ring them and he would say to them, would you like us to keep your table? Are you still coming, or shall I send the staff home now?
Right.
And of course, they would get very, very irritated. But he had then had the final word, so he was happy. And of course, all of his boys used to find that very funny.
Yeah, but I like that. I think that's a really good tactic, actually, because the people who stuff happens. Of course it does, and think plans change and all of that kind of stuff. I'm totally respectful of the fact that can happen. It's happened to me before, but the respectful position is that if something happens, you just call ahead and say, look, this has happened. I respect your cancellation policy, whatever it is, because these are things that restaurants have to have now.
Yeah. I
I
respect you. I respect your trade. I respect your establishment.
Yeah.
I will cancel my dentist. I will cancel my doctor. If I have an appointment with my kid's head of year or school teacher, I will cancel that if I can't make it. Well, why wouldn't you accord us the same respect and cancel your table with us? That's all we need, a phone call.
Yeah. I call ahead if I'm going to be 10 minutes late.
Oh, yes, I know.
Yeah, that's how paranoid I am about. I don't want to lose the booking. I just, I have to make you aware that I'm just running behind. But anyway, yes, we digress. But it's really, really interesting. It's interesting because I come back to the point I was making about the shoutiness. The shoutiness has come from passion for the craft.
Yes,
and actually, as you say, is kind of protecting the craft, protecting the industry in some respects. I guess against disrespect, really, ultimately.
Yeah.
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
But back to your story.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we? Right, where are we now? How long are you then involved in this phase of the operation? What happened next?
So we're now in Park Lane. So over the course of 30 years, the restaurant, because it was a small family venture, we moved several times over the years. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to open great big gleaming, beautiful restaurants in fabulous locations right from the go-get. Well, that wasn't how it happened in our day, and certainly not any way that we could ever afford doing that.
Yeah.
So we started off in Dulwich, and then we moved to Battersea, and then we moved to Victoria, and then we moved to Great Portland Street. And then in Great Portland Street, at that point, we had 2 stars, and we moved the restaurant from Great Portland Street into the Grosvenor House Hotel. And that's where I met Sergio, because he was the director of food and beverage and banqueting at the Grosvenor House. And along with his then GM and another person called Gerald Lipton, they put their heads together and thought, there's an empty shop in the Grosvenor House, the ex-restaurant, which in fact had been in its heyday, 90 Park Lane, had been the first restaurant within the Forte organization to get its Michelin star. And in fact, that was under Sergio. That was his thing. So even though he's a hotel man at heart, he had been very focused on the restaurants within the hotel operations, and he had got them their first Michelin star. So this shop was now empty, and someone had the bright idea to invite Shani Cook to move into the Grosvenor House. And at the time, that was totally unheard of. No one had done that before. Nowadays, it's quite normal for big hotels to have named chefs. And in fact, they go out of their way to bring in and attract multi-Michelin starred chefs into their premises. At the time, everybody thought that we had gone crazy. They thought, oh, well, Shaniqua's obviously not doing well. They obviously need help and support. They obviously need to be under somebody else's umbrella. It was the absolute total contrary, because we had been invited in, because we were who we were, to add to that property. And that's what we did. So once again, groundbreaking, moved to Grosvenor House. And in effect, that's why we got how, when, and why we got our third star, being in that bigger environment.
Yeah.
So I was working there, running there, and I said to you earlier on, I was able to find ways to sort of channel my creativity. And that was in doing things like the flower arrangements. We used to have fabulous flower arrangements. And that was my big thing, going to, as if I didn't sleep few enough hours in the day, I used to go to Covent Garden first thing in the morning, buying enormous amounts of flowers and decorate the restaurants for all the, when we did all the functions. We did weddings, we did parties, with things like that. So that was one way of doing it. And then later on, interior design. We moved when we got our third star, Daddy had done his thing. He had achieved his goal. He got to the 3. There are no more to do. So he thought, that's it, I'm off. And he retired.
Really? Right. Well, leave your audience wanting more,
Possibly,
and
absolutely.
as well. But
Yeah.
That's great as well, though, because there is almost nowhere to go apart from sustaining it then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an achievement in itself, without question.
Yeah.
But, so everybody's wired differently, right? And if that's what was focused on, it is very difficult sometimes when people achieve their dreams for them to figure out what the next dream is.
That was his challenge, to get the 3. He got the 3. I think we did it. We lasted, kept them up for a couple of years or so. And then he said, our lease, we only had a 10-year lease at Grosvenor House. So when the lease was up, he sort of went, okay, I'm out of here. I'm off, done my thing. So we're like, oh, okay, are you sure? He's like, yeah, that's it. Nowadays, I mean, yesterday, or was it a couple of days ago, there was the launch of the Michelin Paris. We had the launches all over in February, there was the launch of the British Michelin in Manchester. And it's a huge song and dance, and there's a party and there's an on stage, and it's become like the Oscars. And you get a plaque, and you put your plaque, and you photograph yourself in front of your plaque, and you're on Instagram, and you're this. In our day, we weren't even allowed to write on our menu, Chez Nico, and put the 3 Michelin stars, for instance.
Right.
Or not on your website, because we didn't have websites in those days. We had letterheads. Oh, how quaint. Old-fashioned paper and pen. So we had on the Chez Nico letterhead, you couldn't write underneath 3 stars. So things have changed an awful lot and evolved. But anyway, He got his stars. He went to live in the south of France, or my parents went to live in the south of France. But meanwhile, we had decided to open a brasserie, if you like, a sort of slightly more informal restaurant, typically French brasserie, that worked along the lines and the principles of classic French food, but in a lighter style. And some of our boys came and started that off. I was running those. Sergio came, and then at that point retired from hotels and came and worked with us, and we did all of those. So in its heyday, Incognito was an absolute fantastic brasserie in the West End, in the heart of Theatreland. So we had to learn a whole new skill, which was the pre-theatre.
Oh, yeah.
To add to the rest of your service. And there I was able to do another one of the things that I loved, which was interior design. And David Collins designed that restaurant for us. And I was able to work with David Collins. And he was fantastically inspirational. And it was a way of expressing my creativity by getting involved in that. Because at the end of the day, I've discovered that the thing I really loved doing, or at the time, was opening restaurants, because opening restaurants is fantastically exciting. Everything from sort of designing extraction and I tell you, even all of the technical stuff, all of the plant, all of the kit that you need, I find as fascinating as what color curtains you're going to have, and should we have carpet or should we have marble, and all of this sort of stuff. It's really, really fun, hard work. But I couldn't have done it with anyone more brilliant than David Collins, because he was also groundbreaking within the hospitality industry. He is the first designer who became a household name within our industry, within the interior design world. Everyone wanted him to do their businesses up. He brought glamour and beauty and designing spaces, as well as we created the food and as the front of house created the service. So that was also became part of the package, having an interior designed restaurant. And nowadays, that's par for the course. But at the time, and it was in fact Pierre Kaufmann who gave David Collins his first break within restaurants when he designed Dante Claire for him. And then everybody wanted David Collins to design their restaurants.
Of course they did. Yes. Pierre, if good enough for Pierre Kaufmann, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. My goodness. Yeah. Do you know what? This is the glorious thing for me about running this little podcast is the stories of things that are just out there that maybe you know a slight bit about, but don't know much about. I had no idea about the history of you, really, and what you've been able to kind of get involved with and over your career to date. Oh. It's quite magical, some of the things that you've and I also love the fact that it's family business. I mean, I hail from a family business myself, granted not at a 3 Michelin star level, but nevertheless my mother and father were very, very devoted to ensuring that they were delivering consistency for the things that they loved.
Yes.
And that, I think that coming from that place of authenticity of, if you kind of do things in the eye of what you enjoy, there's many people out there who will be exactly the same, who will enjoy what you enjoy as well. So yeah, I love the family element of your story, as well as the kind of the devotion to excellence.
Thank you. Well, you see, now when I look back from where I am now, I know so many people in the industry. I know now so many young people. So every year we meet at least 200 new young people who enter our competitions, and some of whom we get to know very, very well and become very close to. So we know so many people in the industry, Sergio and I, that's one of the big things we do, that we're able to put people together or to bring people together who might need each other or help each other out or things like that. So that's a very big part of what we do and that we enjoy so much. I mean, having all of this knowledge, you can't keep it to yourself. You have to give it back and share it. That's surely why do you accumulate all of this knowledge during a lifetime? It's not to sit in your armchair in front of the telly and go, oh, look how clever I am. Look at the number of people I know. Oh, look at the number of prime ministers I've met in my lifetime. Oh, great. Share it. It's all important information that you need to help other people with.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned it a couple of times through your journey as well, that the importance of evolution in all of this as well. The industry has evolved immeasurably. The way that people behave has evolved immeasurably. So it stands to reason that the industry has to continue to keep evolving. But you do that from having a really, really sound base of knowledge for the moment that you're in. Yeah. And then, so there's always something more to learn. There's always, but I got through about 50 minutes on this, and here's a cliche: we are stronger together, right? I mean, that's just a fact.
Absolutely, totally stronger together. It's one of the hashtags that I very often use, not in my hospitality role, but in one of my other roles because I'm a director of and work with our local paper in Rye News, and I am working on getting together a media partnership currently between the Rye Chamber of Commerce, the Rye Jazz Festival, which is an international big festival every year that comes to Rye, and the Rye Arts Festival. And the hashtag that I use is Stronger Together. Rye is a very small town. We want it to stay beautiful, keep thriving, grow, encourage the hospitality, because it's very much a tourist town. We need fabulous restaurants. We need brilliant hotels. We need to be able to employ the young people around here, that they don't end up straying or lost or not within careers. We can give them all of that here. And one of the ways of doing that is by working together. We are stronger together. All of this individualism and fighting against the system and not wanting to be part of a group is just ridiculous, because at the end of the day, what's the thing that keeps us in hospitality going is teamwork. Whether you're in the kitchen or front of house or back of house, wherever you work in a team. You can't do it on your own. You have to have your colleagues around you. You have to get on. You have to be best friends. You have to get on in a professional sense. I have to be able to rely on you. I know that you can do this. I can't do that. You can do this. But together, this is what we can achieve. And teamwork is behind everything that we do in hospitality.
Absolutely. I've utilised a phrase on this show a few times and in other established things, forums and panels and all sorts of stuff, is that unite the clans is what I say.
Yes, there you go. Absolutely. Yeah.
We have a bit of a propensity to, it's almost like this, all the ideas are amazing, but my idea is the best.
Yeah.
So, but rather actually having a melting pot of just, ideas flowing all the time where we have this massive collective of people that exist in this industry. Imagine if we got all those ideas together under one roof and really, really forged forward, because there are challenges that we need to fight together. We need one united voice as opposed to pockets of many voices. And I think if we do that, then we've got a chance of really having a proper seat at the table.
Yeah.
But until then, I think we'll probably still be having the same conversations for years to come.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we do need better representation at higher levels. We need to be a louder, stronger voice. We need to be able to lobby government more than we do. I know we try. I know Kate Nichols does an amazing job. Kate Nichols, who's someone I'd love to meet, never had the chance to meet her so far. The biggest thing that she has achieved for our industry, I think, from my point of view, was during lockdown, when she lobbied constantly for the hospitality industry. Now, we know what we do for a living, all of us. We all, in our little silos, we all do our thing. We know and understand what we used to call catering, we now call hospitality. But it wasn't so much in the public consciousness at all. Because of her, the word hospitality appeared in virtually every single news bulletin throughout the entire day during the 18 months to 2 years of the pandemic. Every single time you turned on the television or the radio, you heard the word hospitality. And it went into the national consciousness in a way that it hadn't done before. And that is an amazing first step towards putting us out there and making us better known, better understood, better appreciated. And she now has a platform and an ear within government, which I'm sure she will carry through and keep growing, lobbying on behalf of the now renowned hospitality industry.
Yeah, here, absolutely. You mentioned competitions that you run. So let's talk about those, because you actually very, very kindly this year, and in fact the previous year, but I couldn't make the previous year, invited me to the Gold Service Scholarship this year, which you're heavily involved with as well. I was just blown away by that event, and especially because it was invite only as well, so I felt very special. But yeah, that's one thing that you're involved with, but you also have other awards that you actually are right behind and kind of responsible for. So talk to me about everything that you do in that front.
Okay, all right. So basically, I've been there and done that. My time is gone, but there are loads of young people coming through the industry currently. And in the future, loads more. We have to keep our industry going. And so Sergio he's part of the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts, and he has been running the annual Awards of Excellence and the Master of Culinary Arts for over 40 years now. So that's those are two of the competitions that we run. And then when the Gold Service Scholarship was started, it was initially an idea that Willie Bauer had. Willie Bauer was big at Forte, and then he was big within the Savoy organization, Savoy Group. And he wanted to highlight front of house. And he took his idea to Alistair Story, and Alistair Story was obviously very impressed with the idea, took it, ran with it. So Alistair Story, Baxter Story as was, and he also thought that this was a brilliant idea and made it happen. So Alistair Story made the Gold Service Scholarship happen with the founding trustees, who are people like Silvano Giraldin, and obviously Sergio, and Sarah Jane Staines was one of the founding trustees. So they started the Gold Service Scholarship. Edward Griffiths came on board, Thomas Cox came on board, and Knut Wilder from the Berkeley is now on board, as well as Lydia Forte. So there's full circle for Sergio, who's one of Lord Forte's old boys. And all these years later, he's working with Lord Forte's granddaughter, Lydia. So Sergio now runs all three of those competitions, obviously not single-handed. Edward is chairman of the judges for the Gold Service Scholarship. He works very closely with someone called John Cousins, who's an amazing person who runs both competitions with Sergio, who we couldn't do without. And John Cousins writes one of the sort of Bibles of hospitality, food and beverage service, I think it's called, which is a very dry title, John, by the way. But it says what it does on the tin, and it's what young people need to read to have a strong understanding of the principles and techniques of hospitality. So each competition is very different, and it spans the age groups. So the first one that you enter is the Annual Awards of Excellence, the Royal Academy competition. And that's from your earliest age in hospitality, which is generally about 18, I suppose, that sort of age. And that goes up to 18 to 26. And that's their competition. Then the second, the mid-range age group. So that's a fairly technical competition. The Gold Service Scholarship focuses more on personality and personal skills and that sort of intangible that you bring to hospitality. And that goes up to the age of 28, I think, 22 to 28, in that age range. And then the final one is the Master of Culinary Arts. And the Master of Culinary Arts isn't age specific, but you need to have had at least 10 years a 10-year managerial role within the hospitality industry before you can enter the Master of Culinary Arts.
Right.
So that has its challenges, because you would have thought, oh, well, they've been managers for 10 years. Now they know it's all fantastic, easy peasy. When you've been a manager for 10 years, chances are you spend a lot of time on a computer or in an office or sitting down. And in fact, going back to the floor and remembering how you carve a salmon perfectly, or how you prepare fruit with a fork and knife rather than, carving it properly rather than using your hands. They have to identify ingredients, identify cheeses, So in fact, there's a lot of study involved in doing that at their age. We help with that. And when you've achieved the Master of Culinary Arts, it's like a master's degree in any other profession. So it is a master's degree in hospitality, and you are at the peak of your profession. And from then on, you can then teach all of those coming behind you within your establishment the skills and techniques of hospitality.
Yeah, there's a few things in play here for me. One, I'm going to come back to the Gold Service Scholarship as an example. I haven't been to your other awards yet. Maybe we'll rectify that in the future.
Absolutely. Well, the annual awards have just started, so yeah.
Excellent. Is that, if ever were in any doubt that the future of the industry is in safe hands, you just need to go along to that event, because the devotion to excellence from what is essentially a group of young people, I suppose you could argue the much maligned youth of today, as it were.
It drives me mad. Oh, they don't do this. Oh, they don't do that. Oh, in my day, they did this. Well, moan. It is so not true.
Absolutely.
They are extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that to me it's just a wonderful reminder that we have such amazing talent coming through all of the time, every year.
Yeah.
There's always, there's new, and even the people who don't win, they're to make it to that final list is just an amazing achievement in itself. Even to just be nominated, I think, is just a wonderful achievement in itself.
It is amazing. And we want to encourage and build and grow these people. So when you enter the annual awards, when you get through, you become an achiever. You have achieved the Annual Awards of Excellence. When you go through the Gold Service, if you're a semi-finalist, you get prizes as well. You don't have to go all the way through, quarter and semis, I should say. And when you get down to the last 8, those last 8 at the Gold Service Scholarship are all winning finalists. They are the 8 winners of that year. Now, within that category of the 8 winning finalists, a scholar will be named. So each year will be represented by a scholar. But they have all achieved, and they are all winning finalists at the Gold Scholarship, which is something that we try to promote to encourage people so that they don't feel deflated or let down if they feel that they haven't done well or got through. It's all part of the giant learning curve. And if you didn't succeed the first time by getting as far as you want to, you try again the next year. There's nothing stopping you until you get to that age limit, obviously. You keep going and going and going until you become an achiever or a winning finalist. It's there for you to take if you want it.
There's that feeling of co-opetition with it as well, which is a wonderful word I love to use. And I think that we're, as an industry, especially brilliant at this. You only just need to look at Great British Menu, which is currently running,
Yes.
whereby, yes, it's a competition, but the minute somebody is in the mire a little bit, then somebody else steps up to help
Jumps
them,
in,
you know?
absolutely,
And
to help.
that to me is just absolutely, it's just, but that's a hospitality
Yeah.
mentality,
Yeah.
100%. And you get the sense from the Gold Service Scholarship that there's that same camaraderie that's being built amongst competitors, you know, that ultimately, when all said and done, we're all winners and we're all here to support each
Yeah.
other. And actually, we're all here to just make sure that this industry continues to flourish and be the best that it can be. And I will play my part in that wherever I can.
Well, one of the big things that we like to try and do is support them all the way through.
I definitely feel, I could feel that at the
Well,
event itself.
thank you. That's so important to hear, that there are no tricks. You just have to learn some basic things. And if you can't or don't know how, or we will show you, we will help you. We do seminars before the events, before the final, for instance. We show them the food, the drink, everything. We're not there to trip you up or catch you out. We are there to help you be the best person you can be. And you can see, one of the most moving things for me is we have something called Team Gold, where as long as you get to the semi-finals, you are part of Team Gold forever. And they run events and look after each other and speak to each other and keep in touch and all of this sort of stuff. But the final 8 within the Gold Service Scholarship become such a strong unit because of what they've been through during the course of the competition. Every year group remain friends for life. And this is, we're glad that it's happened, but it's not anything that we said, you will form a WhatsApp group, you will speak to each other regularly, you will this. It just happens organically. And you can see just before the scholar is actually announced, it happens every year, that they all sit holding hands together at the front row, because it's the sort of the group together waiting to find out who is the scholar. And when the scholar is announced, the other 7 are just as happy as the scholar for that person to have won. And that's a natural thing that happens, which is quite wonderful.
I could not agree with you more. It's just a fabulous, fabulous thing. And I felt incredibly privileged to be there this year. It was a stunning event. It's just, in a world of doom and gloom, it's just, I think these things are so essential in reminding us all that there's so much brilliance goes on a daily basis. And having awards to kind of recognise that, the Gold Service being one, and all of the other ones that you do as well, are so, so important about reminding people that we are watching and we are listening and we are seeing what you're doing. And it's important that we mark these moments of positivity in people's lives to help keep them elevated and keep them wanting to push on and do more.
Well, and one of the big things of the annual awards and certainly the Gold Service Scholarship is that the prizes that they all get are all educational prizes that keeps pushing them forward. You don't just have the great party at Claridge's, and I didn't have much time to talk to you on the night because I sort of spend my life running around.
A million people to talk to.
I know, so many people, and all the fabulous food that they prepare for us at Claridge's. And everybody says to me, "Oh, have you had the lobster roll? Have you had this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, in a minute." And all of a sudden, it's 10 o'clock. They're clearing down, and I've had nothing. But we've just had the most terrific night because for us, it's a huge showcase every year. But what the kids get from these competitions, again, which makes them different to any other competition, is obviously the care and nurture and the following that they will have, and the umbrella and the love and the protection that we will give them going forward, and the Team Gold friendships that they make between themselves. But it's the educational programs that they are given. I mean, one of the prizes at the Gold Service Scholarship is a week in Lausanne. The École Hôtelière de Lausanne, which is the most prestigious hospitality university in the world, and that costs an absolute fortune to go to, equivalent to if you're going to Harvard or Yale or something like that financially. Our 8 winning finalists get a week at Lausanne. That's part of their prize. So they all get to experience that, apart from just visiting vineyards, visiting Michelin-starred restaurants, doing stages at the Ritz or at Core or at the Waterside Inn, attending a banquet at the royal household. I mean, who the hell ever gets to garden parties? Great, within the grounds of Buckingham Palace, but a state banquet being part of that. I mean, that is a totally unique, once in a lifetime experience. That's
Absolutely.
one of the prizes you get. It is all geared around education and encouraging them to learn in the present, giving them experiences that they can take into the future, grow their careers, and then they will be in a position to give back at a later date in the way that we do now.
Yeah, totally. And it's just absolutely wonderful. I can't. What a way to start. What are we on? It's a Wednesday today, isn't it? That we're recording this. Just a wonderfully positive piece of work that you are doing and have done all the way through. It seems your career to date. Thank you, and I don't mean that in a patronising way. I mean, really, really thank you for everything that you do within that. And I'm so grateful that I think, even without this show, I don't even know if our paths would have ever crossed. So it's for me, I feel really privileged that that I've been able to meet you and have this chat with you.
Phil, that's such a sweet thing to say. Thank you so much.
Bless you.
That's one of the lovely things about our industry, that I always say, I don't understand why people don't view hospitality as the extraordinary career it is. I mean, it is just, you can be any size, any shape, any color, any sex, any sexuality. You can walk in almost off the street into any job, and you will be paid to learn a trade, which you can then grow and to develop into whatever you want it to be. Yeah. There's so much variety within hospitality. There's what you do, there's what I do. There is so much, and why we can't sell this, I just don't understand.
No, I know. Well, we keep trying. I think that's the thing.
We have to keep trying.
Yeah. And stronger together, unite the clans.
Stronger, absolutely, totally agree.
Brilliant. Natasha, thank you so much for your time. I feel like I could talk to you all day, to be honest, but we can't do that.
In fact, we should. I think we should. Absolutely.
Yes. Well, we'll have a coffee or a wine or something like that at another time.
Very good. And set the worlds to right, and hospitality especially.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, Phil, so much.
Take care.
You too. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there we have it. I'll be forever grateful to Natasha for reaching out to me to have her on the show, and I think we can all agree what a wonderful journey she's had, and now doing some amazing work for the industry. We'll be back as usual at 8 PM next Wednesday, but until then, have a great week, and we'll see you then.